I'll always say this, and you can ask Crunch about this too. I was drafting my my retirement tweet on the plane ride home from Maryland, and I was ready to post, but I didn't have internet on the plane, so I was writing it like on my notes app, and I was so I want everyone to gauge this themselves because it's important. It's important to talk about it. I think one of the big parts about this tournament was more an unfortunate thing was the fact that during top 8, Onin, who actually had made their like huge first career win at Supernova a few years prior, or Super Smash Con a few years prior, ended up DQing out of bracket at losers quarters. So Onin beat Jazzo and then DQ'd against Dora Migi, I believe. For those new viewers, it's very uncommon, but I want to show you this clip. So, I'm not sure if y'all had seen this clip specifically. I was over by the creator stage doing my watch party, but even from there, I could hear this it's like the air in the crowd kind of changed, and I'm like, whoa, holy shit. And there is something that needs to be like remarked on here. That's like, I think this is where the big debate comes into the role of whether or not this kind of audience behavior is welcome or warranted at a large-scale gaming event. And obviously, there's one before we do anything, you have to remember this is Supernova. There's a lot of casual people attending this event. A lot of people who it's might be their first time in a community. A lot of people who might have heard the guy booing next to them and decided to boo too. Like, don't go out and harass the booers, everything. And a lot of these might just be first timers at a thing, not knowing how to react to something. So before you throw your pitchforks, to kick this off is the main question. Anyone who's been to a sporting event, anything where the main athlete on the floor probably makes millions of dollars a year. Now, press 1 if at that event you heard at some point booing. I'll press 1 because I went to a Miami Heat game. All right. At some point there was. In major sports, I'm not saying, before, let me not jump the gun here. In major sports, this kind of behavior is very expected if the people in the sport are doing something that the people don't like. I think here's a great way to express it from Stu the announcer. Stu the announcer said, "Yeah, no, people will boo hockey teams when they hold the puck in their own zone. Baseball fans will boo at excessive pickup attempts. You stall, you get booed. It's fine. Of course, I hope Onin is okay. Being booed is never a fun feeling. Hope they can see it isn't personal." Now, that said, if you go out of your way to harass Onin or any player, you should be institutionalized. Boo lame gameplay all you want. That's still a human being. Act like one. And I think I do think it's like it's a pretty good way to summarize it, because, like, you know, I can't act like I'm here acting like I've never been, you know, upset at Steve winning. Of course, I'm like, there's a lot of people like don't like Steve as a character. It's the best character. It's, you know, it's the villainous character, right? But one thing I have always said over and over and over, and I've spewed this rhetoric so often, is please, like, separate the player and the character. Please do this. Like, if you made a character and the community is shit talking your character, yeah, that's a choice that you made. You're playing the best character. I had it with Puff. People had it with Fox and Melee. People had it with Bayonetta and Smash 4, Meta Knight and Brawl. JP or Ken at some point in Street Fighter 6. You can name any character that's top tier in a fighting game, and there will be salty tweets by the droves in any game. And I mean this like seriously. Smash, this is not exclusive to Smash Bros. We are competitive human beings. We hate losing, and we hate feeling like we lost to the game instead of the player. Press 1 if you agree so far. Like, I don't think this is an exclusive issue to Smash Bros. There's always going to be a best character. In the game I play, Melee, Fox happens to be the best character, but also happens to be a glass cannon, so we kind of get to avoid the issue, not fully, but way to a way lesser degree than what people experience in Ultimate with Steve, for instance. I think audiences and viewership and crowds are very important for Super Smash Bros. It's very important that we continue to have this be a spectator sport and not some kind of dying thing that's in the corner. Like, spectacles are spectacles because it's something people want to watch. Even if the character isn't their favorite, people still choose to watch it because sometimes they want to see the character lose, right? It's like when you go to a sporting event and you're a Red Sox fan, you want to see the Yankees lose. And when the Yankees lose, just them losing to another team is enough to make you happy. That's how rivalries work. And yeah, you can call it hate watching for what it is. But again, if you're a, not toxic sports aficionado, you will boo the team, right? You won't throw your cup of beer at Aaron Judge if you get the chance. You know what I mean? It's one thing between like, oh, boo the Yankees because they're a team. The team, a sports team, is kind of like the character in Smash Bros, right? Like booing, like hating a character in Smash is kind of like hating a team in sports. But adding the guy or the person or the pitcher or anyone on Twitter or verbally shouting insults to them, that's to me where it gets cringe. Am I crazy for saying? I don't think that's crazy at all. And I think the person, the player, should be separate, especially when they're just high key doing their job that they get paid to do. Is like very similar to choosing to hate a character in Smash, but letting the player live in peace. This is, and I'm happy with this. Is why I'm glad Stu said this. I do think this is kind of the mentality that we have to approach. Now, when it comes to booing in Smash, I can count on my fingers. It's very rare to hear booing at a Smash tournament. A lot of the times, it's just very loud cheers, or they're not being cheers, right? So when you think about it, you have a decision in the audience, to boo someone if you think they are doing something you don't like. Sometimes I feel like the only times booing might be warranted is if the person on stage is making an absolute ass of themselves or being rude to other people or doing things that are just generally not cool. I understand. I've been booed before. I have pop-offs that have been a bit excessive in my wake because I am just a strange person. And sometimes I deserved it. And I get that too. And that's fine too. They wanted me to play the heel, the villain, One of the things that I got booed for instance, that wasn't a pop-off or what it was ledge camping, for instance. Ledge camping in Melee before the rule came out was seen as a very, detrimental, very bad, very cheap way to win. And I do think the ledge camping in Melee is very similar to the, I don't know if there's a, unfortunately in Ultimate, is there a name for the strategy? And planking is actually even crazier, but yeah, we'll call it walling, right? Walling. Caving. Yeah, planking is under the ledge. Melee, what we did is we added a rule change. And yeah, I won for a long time, and maybe I won too much. I don't know, maybe it was. Who's really to say? But they added some rules to level the playing field, and they added a ledge grab limit. And then they also added a few changes. We got rid of coaching. The rule changes are a different discussion. But when there was a big issue in the meta of a game, wobbling for Ice Climbers was another great example. A rule was added so that it wouldn't be as detrimental as it was before. Makes sense? And again, they kind of fixed it, right? People still have, there's a lot of people still don't like playing Puff, but I would say for the most part, it did generally change because it was there. One of the things that was suggested by people that might really be worth exploring was what the Brawl community, it's a small but dedicated community, what the Brawl community does to fix the issue with Meta Knight. Brawl does something pretty fascinating with their rule set. I'm trying to find the tweet. I'm sure someone can find it here too. But basically, if one player chooses Meta Knight and the other player does not choose Meta Knight, the Meta Knight forfeits all of their stage counterpick privileges for the entire set. That's right. If you're playing Meta Knight and Brawl on the current rule set that they use, Meta Knight is not allowed to choose any stage. Their opponent gets to choose every stage in that set. And apparently it balances things out kind of nicely without going into things and, without, overhauling the code and going inside. I kind of like that a lot because if you are taking Steve to a certain stage, the materials on the stage change, right? The materials they're able to get. I do feel that we might be able to solve, or fix like a whole two birds one stone thing, because what's the main issue at hand? And Amok, I'm gonna put your tweet on here because you gotta love an Amok tweet on a Monday night. What I think this could solve is two things. One, if this character is truly unbalanced and it's too much for the game to handle, and maybe it's just something has to be done and no one's really too sure what to do, having a bit of a rule change, probably for the health of the game, not a bad idea, right? And also, it's a rule change that could be easily implemented worldwide by the entire scene. You know what I mean? You let the Steve player lose their stage kind of picking choices, and then maybe you add a couple stages to the rule set. Maybe you experiment with Yoshis, maybe with Lilat. Maybe that could be at the discretion of the TOs. And here's what happens. Here's what happens when you decide to take like the rule change issue into your own hands. What happens is when the public is aware that Steve now has to work a lot harder for their wins, and if that's made transparent to the community in full, when that happens, then people start to appreciate, or I'll put it this way, they start to respect slightly more. They start to respect a Steve win, right? A lot of people still won't like it, but even if it's 5% more people be like, oh, well, actually won without even getting their own stage counter picks, that's still a good improvement compared to what it is. When they added the ledge guard limit for Puff, I saw a big, important change in people and how they see Puff win, especially when I would win or lose. I don't know. It's like they were like, "Oh shit, he still won that." You know what I mean? And it was there. So I legitimately think I'm just offering this as an idea because I don't know. I'm in this point. I've got a platform in the Smash community, and sometimes once in a blue moon, I will say something that actually makes sense and actually happens to work. If we change the rule set, you will have what people consider a more fair / balanced game, and you will have Steve players playing with a slight handicap, which would then cause their wins to have more merit, which in my honest opinion would probably lower, at least slightly, some of the harassment these players get. And I think in doing so, we get to avoid future situations like the ones that we had with Onin at Supernova, because I think we can all agree no one likes a DQ. No one likes DQ. The player themselves doesn't like it. The audience doesn't like it. The other people in the top 8 don't like it. unless you want to avoid the Steve, obviously. I legitimately think this could be something special. As an example, right? If we're always going to have bad eggs in this scene, if we're always going to have bad eggs in the crowds, people that don't really know what to do, how to handle their emotions when seeing something else, people who boo, you know, in life, in public, those people are always going to exist. You don't get to choose life and what it is in society and whatever it is. What you do get to choose is how you can like almost hedge the difference and find a happy medium that lets everyone enjoy the game just a little bit more, right? You can't make everyone happy. This is very, very true. You can't make everyone happy, but what you can do is try to make everyone a little bit happier, and make concessions where things where that's needed, right? If we're not going to ban Steve, which I do not think that's going to end up happening worldwide, because I just won't, especially with Japan in the mix. If it was just North America and we were on our own, different story, because North America ends up being the Wild Wild West. If that was the case, if we're not banning Steve, putting a slight handicap, I think, levels the playing field a good bit for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate until Smash 6 comes out, and it provides Steve players a chance to win an uphill battle presented against them, which would then merit them getting some more respect from the general public, which in my heart and in my eyes would lower the chances of harassment happening. If I could go into Ultimate's code, if I could go into Ultimate and tear out the code and, you know, really tweak one giant thing with a character, I always say this: if you made Steve the lightest character in the game, I'm talking like Pichu weight, or whoever it is, this character, which dies from like getting breathed on, would be hype. You might not believe it when I say this. People would be like, holy shit, he's playing they would call him the Lego, because he dies from everything, right? But then what if you won with all that, right? To me, that would be something special as well. I've always said one of the big issues with Steve is his weight. Steve's weight is the same as Wolf. And to me, that's always been like pretty problematic. All right, let me bring Elijahman in here. I truly don't believe there's any other character that needs to be really modified. But I will add this as well while we're here watching this. The reason I think this situation specifically is pretty unfortunate is because, unlike basketball players, unlike professional athletes, unlike people who get paid like, you know, 7-8 figures to do what they love, we're not just an esport with pretty low prize pools. We are an esport with a still comparatively a pretty massive viewership to many other fighting games, with a decreasing every day, a decreasing number of sponsors, every day a decreasing number of players, and every day slightly decreasing numbers of viewers, because of a few reasons. One might be the game just getting stale. One might be just people wanting to see something else. Another thing might be that people are waiting for Smash 6. So when you still do have players willing to put themselves out there and play this game and choose a certain character and do so, you have to remember that in a day's notice, as we saw with Onin, in a day's notice, they might just decide to not play anymore. And then their talent and their efforts and everything that they put into this meta and what it was, the storylines, every narrative, whatever you want to call it, suddenly is gone. And yeah, for a lot of people, are going to be like, yeah, we get to watch less Steve. Awesome. They're going to be celebrating what it is. But they're missing the point here. They're missing the point that instead of pushing people out of the scene for as a character and then targeting them, and then, you know, I heard Onin was getting, you know, I don't know if it's true or not, but like crazy DMs or threats, apart from the booing and whatever it was. Like if that's like the kind of stuff that you do, it's just like, what are you doing, man? Oh, how old is Onin? Onin's 19 years old. And then you harass them about anything, about their life choices. Like, really? You're gonna get into their personal life because they play Steve? What are you, a fucking loser? Are you a fucking giant loser? What are you doing? You know what I mean? Like, think about that. Think about how dumb that is. So that's my point. It's just like this is nothing. You're just being evil. You're just being an evil person. So I'm hoping people here watching this agree with me on that. I think it's good to not be evil. And not everyone's evil. So people are just dumb. But also a good thing is if you were dumb in the past and you're called out on it, how you act afterwards. And if you're less dumb afterwards, that's a good thing. That's growth. Sometimes we're young and stupid and we're immature. We don't know any better. Or we don't understand the way life works. I think, like I said, two groups take responsibility here, right? And, you know, I hate to point out the elephant in the room, but like, I knew Onin went by, I think Pocket as their tag for a bit too. And everyone was wondering like, why they changed their tag to Pocket all of a sudden? And I would always answer with like, well, why do you think? Like, it's probably because they didn't want to see fuck Onin on their timeline every single day. You know what I mean? Like, and then there was a time where Onin didn't play for a bit, and now we're back to that time. And I think we're in this recursive negative feedback loop where it continues happening. When someone decides to ask the $1 million question of what's the worst crowd that's ever happened in Smash Bros. What's the most unruly crowd that ever happened in Smash Bros. Or the worst crowd moment in competitive Smash Bros. Because every sport, football, basketball, baseball, you can look up YouTube compilations of crowds being awful, very, very awful, just mean crowds. And a lot of people, like you guys are noticing, will pull up and mention the Kreb, right? And there was also fuck Hbox at Genesis, which also one. But everyone likes pulling up the Kreb. Because the Krab, I think, was it was quite literally the boiling point, because that crab was boiled, but it was quite literally the tipping point for myself as a player, for the community to notice what they were doing, but also for the community and the audience to realize how they handle things that they may not like. After the crab happened, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, if there's any people here who still hate watch me, respect for the dedication, but if there's any people here who, let's say, weren't fans of me in the past and are fans now for whatever reason, am I right in saying that after the crab happened, it wasn't necessarily, oh, you have to like me now? It wasn't that. It was more so, oh, maybe how we handle us liking other players a lot more than this guy should change. Maybe we should handle the amount of shit we send to someone because we don't like how they play, or we don't like them beating our best players. We should handle that a little differently now after that, right? And I think that was kind of what happened, because when the crab happened, that really went widespread in the FGC, and yeah, a great documentary came out, and that was great. But and I got very, very lucky, I think, in that regard of someone being on it with a platform that big, willing to tell like my side of the story and my life and what it was. So. My mom always told me I had like a lucky star, like that follows me around for some reason. Like whenever shit seems like it's like stormy and dark and cloudy and not gonna get better, somehow it ends up working out for some reason. Like, I consider myself very lucky for that reason. But you have to understand the vast, vast, vast majority of players that receive hate similar to what similar to the hate that Onin was receiving will not have that level of luck. They're not going to have, this crazy viral moment that happens that makes everyone suddenly understand, garner sympathy, and really just understand their point of view more often, right? And I really do mean this. It's like, God forbid it was a crab. What if it was something worse? What if it was something worse with another player that isn't me? You can think about the player that you hate watching the most in your head, and don't type it. You can think about it in your head, and you can think about if, God forbid, someone like threw a rock or something, you know what I mean? Or like a bottle on stage and it hit them, God forbid, and it was someone you didn't like. Suddenly, I think you would be like, holy fuck, why the hell would you do that? And suddenly someone that you claim to hate, you would be on their side, wouldn't you? And it's just kind of odd that sometimes we need that wake-up call. So I just want to make sure it's just like I just think we need to, especially with players this young, we just need to be careful with how we handle our dislike of things, you know? And the issue is even if you're just booing Steve the character at Supernova, even if that's all that you're doing and that's just all that you want to be doing and that's just all that you care about, the issue is you're on a stage and there's teenagers playing on stage and they hear that, right? And it's like, it's weird because there's almost like no way to boo Steve at a Smash tournament without also directly booing Onin as a player, because Onin is physically there, if that makes sense. I just feel like the best option here is just to not say anything, you know? To me, that is like what I think would feel the most strongly for me. A good point from B-Bets here as well. As someone who hasn't truly dealt with hostile crowds, I can't imagine what Anna went through. I think people tend to dehumanize competitors and treat them like they're a part of some entity. At the end of the day, you're not booing Steve. You're booing a kid who loves the game. Another thing to do it there too. This is why I think there's such a massive disconnect on how there truly just might not be a proper way to boo a Smash tournament. I don't know, just given because of the medium in which it happens, right? There's another one I got. This was Sonics versus Gluto, and I think he got booed after our timeout.
Clutch, man, I can't believe it.
That one was going for the books, man. I already saw you.
And the way Sonics handle it here is kind of how you have to, I think. I did this at Evo 2015. Yeah, this is what you gotta do. I think. I think this shit is dope as fuck. This shit gives you respect, actually, right? But again, the Sonics, has been playing longer, is a little bit older, now it doesn't probably has thicker skin. Not everyone's like this. Booing is, a lot of people, they don't know how to react when they get booed. It is not a nice feeling. You kind of feel like your world's crumbling around you. You're like, what the fuck can I do here? Peebnut, who got top 8 at the same tournament. You can choose to cheer, boo, or stay silent. Why would you boo? Where is your mind? I don't want to see that again. Onin is a competitor, same as me, same as everyone else who entered. Please show them the same respect you'd show me. Unfair treatment disturbs me and my friends. I'm happy to see their co-competitors sticking up, doing that. Peebnut with a great run. And it's funny because Peebnut plays like a zoner, pretty, defensive play style. But, fandom exists for what it was, and it'll go one way or the other. And I really wanted to point out also what DeBuzz said. This Onin stuff is the result of the overwhelming level of maturity in the community. I don't know when it happened, but there's absolutely been a shift towards bullying being cool. It's one of the reasons I've stepped away from the game. It's gotten cool to say heinous stuff about people for any reason and get your social media points. Talk to him, DeBuzz. This shit is so true. Half the day, look, I have people that I don't like in my life. I have people in the scene that I don't really fuck with. Everyone does, okay? We're all people. We're all flawed souls, okay? But I don't fucking tweet about it. I don't. It's just, why? What does it do? You want clicks? You want likes? Is that it? Not everything has to be tweeted, man. Why would someone want to try their heart out if they regularly get booed and disrespected? It isn't even about having thick skin either. At some point, it affects your ability to build a fan base. But if someone bites me, I'll bite them back. That is true. Like Tim. I told Tim to shut up. I don't like what Tim said. I'm here tweeting out my emotion. At some point, it affects your ability to build a fan base, make content, get sponsors. This is true, by the way. Make content, get sponsors, basically turn Smash into something more than a hobby, and if someone has to fight tooth and nail through it, it's depressing. I don't know what they're thinking, but I wouldn't blame them for thinking it's not worth the effort at some point. It's fine to dislike Steve. I don't like him either, LOL. The problem is that there's too many immature kids in Smash that don't know how to express a dislike in a healthy way. The Buzz is spitting, I mean, factual facts here. Read this again. The problem is that there's too many immature kids in Smash that don't know how to express their dislike in a healthy way. It's self-sabotage for the community and a disgusting way to treat other people. And he ends the tweet by saying, this isn't even touching on other reasons Honor might be unfairly hated on by losers. Not everyone is toxic, but if you're not calling out people who are contributing to the issue, that's how we get to the point where our own players don't want to be involved in the community. Like, bro. Yo, is that Elijahman in the call?
Yo, what's good, Hungrybox?
Elijahman, happy for you to be our first, I guess, guest here. Willing to share your thoughts, I guess, on what's going on.
And like about the whole, Onin situation and the booing. I was in the crowd watching that, and like I definitely felt it. Like it was definitely a very like one-sided crowd, and like as a competitor, because I've competed before and I've never been booed like that. So I don't know what it's like to actually experience the hate. You know what I'm saying? I've never really been in that position, but I imagine it really sucks. And genuinely I feel bad for Onin, and I don't even know what I would do in their situation. Like, of course you can, keep playing through it, but at some point, like, it just gets to a point where it's just like, okay, enough is enough. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I do just I just feel bad for Onin. That's all I can really say.
No, I feel that too.
You've been in a similar position too with Melee, because I know, of course, a lot of those players don't like, Puff and all the camping. How would you say, like, you would handle that type of situation?
So that was the point, right? Well, I really was like, I really was like public enemy number one. And you have to understand, when you are getting, it wasn't just like a faction, like oh, half the crowd is haters, half the crowd is HBox fans. It was more so like, it was the hype cool fucking thing to do, to like just shit on me like that. It just was the cool thing to do back then. So I kind of really had no foot in the door. I had no leg in the race. I had to kind of just buckle up and take it all the time. But the thing is, I was the best, and I loved being the best so much that I just pushed through. And then I had like my small but dedicated people that were like always cheering for me, and I just always told myself, that's who I'd fight for. That's who I'd play for. And one time it got so bad that like Team Liquid actually contacted all my close family and friends and fans, and they made me this little book. And it's a book with 50 people who had sent messages to me telling them how much they appreciate like what I did in Smash for them. And that shit made me cry when I saw that. It was one of the most beautiful things they've ever done for me. I was just like, oh my God, like that kept me going like so hard. And it was just really, really important. But like what I was saying earlier, Elijahman, is that a lot of people do not have like the luck that I did, and having like that kind of support system behind us. A lot of people just get shit on, and then because, like the Buzz said, shitting on people is so popular nowadays for social media points, it's like an addiction to clout, that it just snowballs into this terrible, horrible fucking thing that makes people just legitimately, as we just saw, not want to compete anymore. And it's just not the way to do things. I don't know if you can see my screen, Elijahman, but I have a tweet here from Pharaoh who saying multiple tweets from multiple people celebrating on DQing, not asking why, just happy they can watch pure Smash with the Billy characters and not caring about their well-being. It's ridiculous and angering and disgraceful. There was a ton of stuff like this, and I had to I had to restrain myself because sometimes I'll see a tweet so immature that I'll quote tweet to dunk on them and just be like, I want to show the world how much of a piece of shit you are. But also, I'm getting too old for it, and sometimes I just want to like stream and talk about it instead of making a whole like seance about it. But you know, when it comes to like your scene, is there a player that like received hate in your scene that was like just from the character?
I mean, in the Canadian Smash scene, honestly, like, I really can't even think of anyone that was really ever hated. Like, I don't think we had like a really top level Steve. Like, I know we had Soar who played Steve, but you know, Soar was never even really hated like that. I don't think I've seen, like, I feel like this type of hate is very rare to come across, especially like in the Smash community. And I think the unfortunate part of it is that, like, a lot of this just gets ruined by the very vocal minority. Because I do genuinely think that, like, of course, I think there's like a lot of people who are booing Onin in the crowd. Like, I was there, I heard it, but in terms of like, you know, the tweet that Pharaoh quote retweeted, like, oh, Onin DQing whatever this guy's celebrating over, I think I only saw that one tweet and maybe like one or two others, but I didn't really see that many people online kind of celebrating Onin DQing. But I think it's just that the vocal minority is really, really loud, and it's always going to be super easy to, like, you know, kind of get really down on yourself about the negative stuff. And, you know, that stuff really stings, especially when you put your all into competing. And like, I know how much work these players put in, like the Steve players, Onin, Syrup. Like, they are 100% grinders. Like, they didn't just get there because of Steve, right? There's a bunch of people playing Steve. And yeah, I also, another thing I want to say is, I think when you end up being like the best Steve or the highest placing Steve, you're just going to end up getting all that hate funneled directly towards you. And I also think it's a lot tougher for Onin, just because Onin is a solo Steve player. Like, of course, Syrup also plays Ness, so people are excited, like, oh, Syrup might go Ness and all that. But yeah, no, it's an unfortunate situation. That's all I can really say.
No, I think you stated it pretty well. And I wanted to bring up this tweet from Didi and see your thoughts on it, because I was just like, I think this also encapsulates it. Why are you traveling, competing, and spectating in a game you clearly hate? The on and booing baffles me. And I think Lavish also posted something similar, saying that this isn't just a hatred of you know, a player or what it is. This is a hatred of the game itself. This is just a sort of thing where maybe it's just people just hate this game. I tell you, but it's not on hate. It's Smash Ultimate. It was a tough realization for me too. But the day I realized that the Smash I like doesn't exist anymore, my relationship with the game became significantly healthier. Do you think that people who are this like toxic minority just generally despise Ultimate, or do you think this is not really the case?
Honestly, I think a lot of the people who end up hating the game just usually they hate the game because of the people they surround themselves with, right? Like, I feel like if you surround yourself with a bunch of people who genuinely love Smash, then you're gonna end up loving Smash too, even if it's, you know, you're fighting Steve. Like, you know, I feel like if you talk to Peebnut every day, I don't know if you guys know Peebnut, you know, amazing Mega Man player, and he literally loves Smash. I feel like if anyone talked to Peebnut every day, like, his passion for Smash is literally contagious. But unfortunately, a lot of people hate Steve, and, you know, people are very passionate about hating Steve specifically, and that just kind of, you know, it spreads. That negativity really spreads really quickly. And I genuinely think people just hear other people say they hate Steve, and then they automatically just bandwagon being like, oh, it's cool to hate Steve, let me hate Steve as well. It's like what DeBuzz was saying earlier. Like, it's cool, like, people think it's cool to dunk on people, and that's what's going to get you likes on Twitter and all that. Like, if you dunk on a player, you're probably going to get a lot of likes and retweets, especially if it's, like, funny, and, you know, the joke is funny, but it comes at the expense of another player. Like, that's really what gets the clicks. And I know it's unfortunate, but, you know, it's sad. That's,
yeah,
you know, dunking on characters and players is cool.
Yeah, I know. I saw Rockman hopped into the call too. I'll talk to him in a second. That was a great way of putting it. Rockman, I see you in the call as well. Rockman, you've had your fair share, maybe not of like auditory booing at tournaments, but you've had people who decided to make you they're punching bag on social media just because you were like progressing the Steve meta and sharing information about that, for better or for worse.
And there it is.
Thinking Mars bars. And I guess I wanted to ask you, just first and foremost, what your take on what happened was, and where do you think the Steve and the meta sits within it?
All right. Well, I mean, first of all, thank you for actually having me on here to talk about this. I feel it's good to get as many avenues as possible.
Yeah.
But it's a tricky thing to really say because people just don't like the character for a multitude of reasons. It could be camping, damage output, whatever. But I do feel as though people have a little bit too much of a personal hate that they don't really like to admit. Because it's not too far-fetched to say people would much rather blame someone else as opposed to themselves. So if a single-player game, for instance, they get mad at it, they blame the devs, they blame the controller. But in a multiplayer game like Smash, and especially a fighting game, some people view it as if I play Steve or if anybody really plays that character, they tend to feel like, oh, because they're choosing to play the character, this specific person is purposefully making my experience bad, therefore I must hate the character and or the player. Which a lot of times I feel like people take it way too seriously and way too personal. And it kind of just feels like at some point people just bandwagon on it because, if one person says, this is a really bad thing, I don't like how the Steve plays, or I don't like how this character plays, if that's seen as okay, then all of a sudden everyone around them is going to start saying, that's totally okay to do, when it honestly really isn't.
Earlier, before you came to the stream, I was mentioning something where I said what the Brawl players do with Meta Knight, which is where if you decide to handicap Steve players a little bit and not let them, for instance, counterpick stages or forfeit their stage counterpick right, do you think that, one, it might balance the playing field a little bit for the meta, and two, because you're introducing an obstacle for Steve players to have to win through, when they do win, or if they do still win without their counterpicks, it might merit some and garner them some respect, or at least lower the harassment just a little bit, because people will be like, oh wow, like, if you still won even with no counterpicks, you must be actually good at the game. That was what the Brawl players are doing with Meta Knight when one player goes Meta Knight, one doesn't, and it seems to be working pretty well for them. So I was wondering what your thoughts were on that, and if you think that would be a good idea.
That's a really tough thing to say because aside from the whole, if you get no stageless counter picks, so where they just pick whatever stage against you, the big issue is, yes, I like how you think from a positive standpoint of the whole, if they're winning even despite the stage picks, they must have at least, put in the efforts. But unfortunately, not everyone's going to think from that positive standpoint. There's just as many people who would say that are going to be saying, if the Steve can win even without counter picks, then why bother? This is more proof this character should be banned. And unfortunately, when it comes to the whole Steve discussion, you have to be willing to see that some people are just going to be purely negative about this. And trust me, I've seen from my own experiences, people will just be purely negative about it. I do agree with the idea of the whole, hey, we should maybe incorporate some stuff. Like, maybe Steves don't get bans, or they get one less ban, or maybe force the Steve to drop all their materials at the start of a game to make it a bit more balanced because they're forced to attack now. But it's something we just have to experiment and be open to experimenting with.
Yeah. I mean, we did try a variety of different rule sets when it came to the coin box, right? And we tried meter, we tried banning Steve every other week. But it was funny because when the Steves got banned, the Sonics was the one, and when the Steve wasn't banned, the Steves would beat the Sonics, and then maybe sometimes it would be the Steve. And it was like having more characters kind of introduced this like challenges to each other. Elijah, man, what's your thoughts on the introducing a slight handicap to Steve players to try to fix these two edges of one stone? What do you think about that?
I think that's a bad idea. I don't think it's gonna stick, and there's too much variance with it. Like, no one's actually gonna stick to one thing. Some people might say, Steve can't place blocks in the air, or Steve should drop all
I'm saying
materials.
A universally accepted handicap that
in a world where everyone would accept a handicap for Steve.
The same handicap, like it was just added in there. Do you think, let's say in a perfect world, in a vacuum, all the major TOs, Genesis, Supernova, Port Priority, Riptide, they all sat down like, yeah, I'm down to try this out, and they agreed upon a Steve handicap. Do you think in a perfect world that it would help things, or is even agreeing upon a handicap not the way to do this?
I don't know. I feel like a handicap isn't the way to go about it. I feel like Steve even still is not that dominant. Of course, Steve is clearly the best character in the game and the most present character when it comes to top 8s and top 64s, but like Steve is still not winning every single major, and I think that we still have a big character pool to the point where I don't think it's really necessary.
I see.
And if I can
Also, another thing I wanted to mention.
Go for
Sorry,
it. Go for it.
This whole Onin situation, it reminded me of like the whole TM7 Zap thing when he qualified for the Luminosity Invitational, and like everyone was dunking on him because they were saying he was a Wi-Fi player, and they were making fun of him for like winning only one game, and I was like, I feel like people didn't really care as much for the Zap situation just because nothing really happened. Like Zap didn't DQ or anything, and I feel like this Onin DQing was kind of like a wake up call, being like, oh crap, like this is actually serious. Like this is an actual person behind the character, right?
Right. And that's what we have to separate. What I was saying is, if you're booing at a tournament, you can't separate the character from the player because the player is like physically there, right? And to me that's what makes it tough. That's why I'm wondering, does booing have any place in a Smash tournament? Whereas, and when I was saying at a sporting event, kind of like I said, a baseball event, a rivalry, or like Lakers or the Warriors, if you're booing a team for just destroying your team, it's like fine to boo the team. It's not fine to throw a beer at one of the players in the court. Does that make sense? Like, I think there's a very clear designation there between what is like appropriate and what isn't appropriate. And I'm wondering what is and what isn't appropriate when it comes to these sorts of things. Like, I don't know, because other esports of it, you can't control crowds, right? Crowds will do the crowd they want. The last thing you can do is tame the human desire to do something, especially in a mob mentality. So I'm wondering, do we just kind of like, for these young players who are coming up and getting really good, especially the character we don't like, should the more older players kind of give them like a warning, like, hey, you might get booed for doing this, but it just comes with the territory. You got this. Like, what's the, how do we go forward to handle this?
Yeah, like I don't really think that's something you can necessarily answer per se, because obviously everybody has their own opinions and they're free to express it. It just really depends on, like, the best thing I can say is if you want to do it. It's just a really hard question to answer, because the best thing I can say is obviously do your best to not direct it specifically at a certain player, because you don't want to like physically go at them or verbally go directly at them, obviously. So I'd say if it had to be done, which it really shouldn't, but if for whatever reason it had to be done, keep it private, keep it quiet, keep it not directed at a specific person or anything like that. Which again, as we know, it's really hard to say, which is why this is such a tough question to answer. But that's honestly the best I could really say.
Okay. Eli, what about you?
I was just saying, I feel like you can't control a crowd like that. You can't tell them, oh, don't boo, because people are gonna, like Rockman said, people are gonna have their opinions and they're free to express that. Which is like, I don't even really know what the solution would be either, because you can't just tell people, hey, you're not allowed to cheer, because then what kind of tournament is that? You don't want to, that's I feel like that's what American majors are known for. The crazy crowds. I think of the huge majors with people popping off and all that. Like, I feel like if you take that out of the competition, then I feel like you kind of suck the life out of the tournament.
It's seeming like the more that I think about it, the more that we might just have to accept the fact that if you're gonna be, if Smash Bros, competitive Smash Bros, had an audience of 10 people, if it was like, I'm trying to think of a similar fighting game. What's the fighting game with a very small but passionate but dedicated scene? Maybe like NASB 1 or something, or even NASB 2. Maybe NASB 1, right? But let's say there's still NASB 1 players, right? It's a very small community, but let's say once a year they meet up and they play games. Like, you're not going to hear them booing each other because they're just happy the game exists in general, right? GG plus R, yeah, it's another small community. It's like, the issue, I think, comes in plurality. Have you ever been to a Twitch chat with, like mine, with 500 to 700 people? generally pretty tame in here, pretty respectful conversations, you know, decently moderated. It's been fine for the most part. But let's say you go to like a super major Twitch chat with 17,000 viewers and it's followers only off, no moderation. What happens generally in those chats? Probably not something very good, right? It gets out of control. And you might start wondering, is this actually a mimic of what happens in real life? If you put 10 people in a room to watch something, I don't think a single one of those 10 people is going to actively boo something, unless they're at a bar and watching a sporting event that's very, very public. But let's say it was just 10 people watching a Smash game. You're like, I don't think you're going to boo someone just by yourself, right? But you put 10,000 people in a room, you're going to have one guy who really, really, really doesn't like Steve more than the average person. And in fact, they don't like it so much that they start booing, which then creates this effect, this cascading effect where other people hear it and they say, well, someone else is doing it, I'll do it too. And then in Twitch chat, they'll see one shitter and I was like, oh, well, he's shitting, I'll shit. And then you see how it goes. It spirals out of control. I do think that's the chain that happens in crowds. And I think because Smash has that viewership, maybe we just need to teach players that this is something that just simply might happen.
I mean, I agree with you in the sense that, like, you know, the more people you have, the more likely you are to, you know, have people booing. And I saw a lot of discourse on Twitter, too, about people saying, and I'm sure you went over some of the tweets, people saying this only happens at Supernova. And I do think that's true to an extent, just because Supernova has a lot more of a, you know, casual audience. A lot more casual players are going to be going to that event, which means, like, one, they don't, you know, necessarily compete as much, which means they don't know what it's like to compete and really, you know, be on the stage and, you know, experience that type of crowd. That's one. And two, you know, like you said, there's going to be a lot more people, so you're a lot more likely to have that one guy who just really hates Steve, and then it snowballs into this whole entire thing where, you know, it gets really out of hand.
Yeah, the snowballing is the problem that matters. Like, yeah, if you get booed once, like, it's usually, like, fine. Like, it's just a crowd or a few people in the crowd don't like what, you know, how you're playing. But I think the issue is in 2025, that might be like the least of the problem in a sense. It goes far and beyond, and it makes people you know, go to their social media or send them shit and whatnot. Like, that's the kind of part that I hate so much about the Smash scene. Like, when they do that, it's the best way, like the Buzz put it too. And I'm not. Was this Onin's reaction to hearing it? What is he?
Gracious in victory and in defeat. Very well played by Onin too. You got to give it up. Definitely some great adjustments made by them throughout that set.
Yeah, I think when it comes to my thoughts on it too, it kind of is what to expect. So in reality, even though I had the idea of like adding the handicap, I think when you put it down to brass tacks, yeah, the odds of it happening are probably pretty low in general for that to be an agreed upon thing. And you have to imagine, you know, what was there another group of characters that received a similar kind of treatment for what it was? I feel like Smash 4 Bayos had that. Rockman, were you as a Steve player, have you ever considered quitting the game?
Yes, multiple times, and you can probably scroll back through my Twitter to find out a lot of that stuff. I don't want to share too much, but as you can imagine, obviously not to the same degree as Onin, but there have been times both surprisingly in person as well as online where I've had some stuff go on, and honestly at a certain point you have to realize at the end of the day, yes, it's good to, you know, do well at tournaments. It's good to have fun. It's good to get high placings. But at the end of the day, is it worth taking, like, verbal harassment at the risk of potentially one day, like you mentioned with the crab incident, somebody snapping and that going a little bit more physical? Because at the end of the day, if you just want to, you know, play the game and have fun, is risking your own mental and physical health worth playing a video game for? And quite honestly, no, it's not. So I don't blame Onin or any other Steve for honestly just for lack of a better term, like crashing out or even just taking a break from everything, because at the end of the day, those who are spreading the hate, they do whatever they want. They do what they feel like they want to do, and they'll just turn it off. They'll go off their screens, they'll just walk away. But the issue is when everyone's dogpiling on a certain player, that's not something they can just ignore. It's an easier said than done. Nobody can just be like, oh, just ignore these people or just, play to the crowd. Because quite honestly, 99.9% of the people who offer help in these situations haven't actually been in their shoes at that point. They don't truly know. And I feel like that's just the big issue. So, yes, I have considered quitting because of the hate. I've heard other people who are also Steves consider quitting. And, it's a thing. That's why you see so many Steve Mays take a break. They love the game. They want to keep playing it. But at what point is it really worth? That's for everybody who plays the game to decide.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense to me. And yeah, I would not be surprised, like, if I could ask, like, so many players, like, have you ever considered quitting this game? Like, there will be a a very very large number of a certain player group that will say yes to that answer. But I have to also consider the other angle here too, and the other angle is that, yeah, I'm part of the group that, many times at a coin box or what it was, or even in a live tournament, I'll see the Steve win and I'll go, fuck, you know what I mean? Like, it just is, in the essence, as someone who loves the game and wants to see other characters, like, that's just, yeah, it's just something that a lot of us have done. But you'll never catch me like on stream saying anything like personally or heinous about the player themselves. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. And that's just, I've made this tweet so many times, I made this point so many times. I think I can probably find out like where I said it last time, but we just gotta separate the player and the character once and for all. I don't know why this keeps happening. This is literally from October 2023. Exactly there.
I support Onin, and I agree that you've said it perfectly. You got to separate the character hate from the player.
Yeah.
And I think that's the bottom line at the end of the day. You gotta. At the end of the day, it's a game, and you shouldn't be attacking people for how they play. They're just trying to win like everyone else is. You know, everyone behind the character is a person.
Yeah, I think that's pretty valid. And well, Rockman, when you got here, I forget if it was you or Eli that had asked that, but basically the question was like, how did I deal with it? How did I cope with it? And for the new viewers who are just tuning in, my answer to that was basically like, I was lucky enough to have a lot of things turn around for me and change for me, and I also had a very good support group to do it too. But does that mean people were not allowed to not like Puff? No, you are, of course, very, very allowed to not like Melee Puff. I don't like Melee Puff a lot of the times, and it was crazy to sound like, but even me, right? Because I know what it is. And I don't know, people call me now an aggressive Puff, but maybe it's just like, at the end of the day, it was something there's like in my heart and soul, I just want to like win by doing cool shit with my character instead of doing like the really, really cheese stuff. Like, there is a world where, if I truly wanted to like really, like, for 8 minutes at a time, grab ledge every 6 seconds for the entire game, is that possible and legal? Yes, it is. Are you gonna have a good day in the venue afterwards? Probably not. You know what I mean? There is that aspect to competition that kind of matters, where it's like sometimes winning is worse than losing, depending on how you win. So, what do you think about that?
No, I mean, honestly, that makes sense with what you're bringing up. Because, like, obviously, yes, it's fun to hit all the fun stuff. Like, you see players like Susu, for instance, who go for all the Steve tech. There's so many people's favorite Steve player because they go for the hard stuff. They go for the cool stuff. But at the end of the day, if you want to win, you can't rely on just the cool stuff. You got to go for the lame stuff, And again, it's just every player's journey at that point is they just have to realize, is it worth it to, I guess, quote unquote, lose a fan base if you want to win more? And unfortunately, for some characters, that's easier said than others, you know?
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm just wondering, like, if would you have done the same thing in Onin's shoes?
Uh, by same thing, what specifically do you mean?
Um, I guess I don't. Well, actually, you don't really know what Onin what they were going through in their shoes because we don't know what they were experiencing privately. I guess so. Maybe actually that question isn't even worth asking or answering. Um, the only time I was actually close to quitting Melee was after, well, unsurprisingly, after the crab throw. I'll always say this, and you can ask Crunch about this too. I was drafting my my retirement tweet on the plane ride home from Virginia, from Maryland. And I was ready to post, but I didn't have internet on the plane, so I was writing it like on my notes app, and I was gonna post it as soon as I landed. So I opened up Twitter to go post it and to go like just basically share like, yeah, I'm pretty much done with this. And then I just got flooded with the timeline. It just spread like wildfire, and people's outpouring of support and response to it. It was just like really. It was baffling to me. The people, even my D1 haters, the people who like it was their fair thing to do, even they were like, "Yeah, you shouldn't do this." I was like, "What the fuck? Is that what it took?" It was weird. But again, I guess in hindsight, I was thankful for it.
Yeah, because it sucks that it had to be a moment like that, but at the end of the day, it's a moment like that where people finally realize, wait, this is an actual person behind the tag they use for tournaments, you know?
Yep. And Chia, I saw you on the call. Is there something you want to say about Smash 4?
So there's another character that has gotten like an immense amount of hate that hasn't been touched on yet. I missed like the beginning of the call, but the topic of me's in Smash 4 was a big one that also really, really affected me. And I'm sure like you've seen it just with so many other people in general, but like that initial rise really started when like Brawler started took over with like the short and the small weight, whatever, because then started like taking over like top players and stuff, especially in Tri-State. But what was additionally weird about that was first it was like, oh, small Brawler is like super broken, so then they made the rules where you can use medium height, medium weight, and that was completely like fine and balanced until then they just like as soon as we started to get rid of custom moves for other characters, they kind of just all got the Mii's in there as well. And also some other tournaments started to just ban Mii's completely, or like all the comments like, oh, the character select screen looks better without them, etc., etc. But then the hate got so much worse and other people getting wrapped into it. So for instance, I was a Mii Gunner main and my ex at the time was a Mii Sword Fighter main, but there were both like lower mid-tier characters where Brawler was really the only one that was like causing a meta issue, despite once the medium height and weight, which all the Brawler mains agreed with and was fine, all three of those character players got such immense hate, just like whether it's also like if you played them, but also just talking down on them so much as a character that eventually gets the person too, like they didn't even look like real characters, fuck them, whatever. Where like I also enjoyed Mii's of like who they were as a character in terms of like Nintendo's brand identity for that time as a big like game industry enjoyer. I enjoyed Tamagotchi Life as a game. But it got so bad and so much hate and vitriol sent my way and our way and the entire community, I actually did quit Smash 4 over it. And that's when, in that time frame of like that 2017-ish, maybe late 2016 era, I completely fucked off of Smash 4 and went to PM until Ultimate came out. And I just didn't look back because I tried holding on to it, but it was like at least half the events out there started banning the characters, whether it just be restricting customs or banning them altogether. So one, I couldn't even play my main in half of them, a low tier character. And then it's like, whenever you could, you would get hate about it, even if you didn't place top 8 or whatever. So I went to a different Smash game because of it.
All right. Yeah, that's a good example too. Yeah, I think for the rest of the conversation, like I think I've pretty much remarked on everything that I wanted to say, give my 2 cents. Yeah, we're kind of just reiterating it at this point. And things rarely do change, so I'll see you guys in 1 year and have the same conversation once again, and that'll be there going with no problem at all. So yeah, guys, let me know what you think in the YouTube comments below about the crowds and tournaments and the meta. So yeah.